Look at our questions for on our topic of Edom. Let's go over that as a review. All right. Number one, the people of Edom come from the man Esau, who was his brother. Okay, so who was the father of the Arab people? Esau was the father of the Arab people, and who was the father of the Jews? Jacob. All right, so now that is going, yes, question. Yeah. Ishmael is part of that, but out of Esau comes the lineage where these groups are going to mingle later on down in history, and that's where we are going to begin to get some of that. Ishmael also has a segment of that, but they're all going to intermingle at some point. So you could say Ishmael is also part of that. That's fair enough too. But in the story of Jacob and Esau, they, it's kind of standard to say that Esau is the father of the Arab people, Jacob the father of the Jews, because that brotherly relationship is going to set the foundation for so many things. Now, with Ishmael, there's Isaac and Ishmael. And so that's also, even before Jacob and Esau, that's also a story that comes. But eventually the Ishmaelites and the Edomites are all going to commingle anyway and become the countries that we look at today. Countries like Turkey and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and even down into Egypt and all of those countries where, well, the countries that are in the news, right? The countries that even today we see in the news. Also the countries that in 1948, when Israel rejoined together as a nation and rebirthed as a nation, those are the nations that came to fight Israel the very first day. The very first day after 1948, when they were rebirthed as a nation, 6 Arab nations joined together in a coalition and came against Israel. That was 1 day old as a nation. Really didn't have any military established, really didn't have, a group of people that were joined, but God miraculously preserved them from these 6 nations that came against them. Whew, it's too warm in here for me. Sorry. 6-day war. Yep. And so that was, God has miraculously, but those nations from Esau, I'm sorry, my sleeve is caught. Those nations from Esau we're still fighting them today, right? So we're going to see more of that. So had God given them, the Edomites, a land of their own? Yes. Okay. So he also blessed Esau with, if Esau had taken the right pathway, he would have also been blessed with a large a group of descendants, a large tribe, their own land. And in fact, he even told the Israelites what about that land? Remember, we talked about it? He told the Israelites, don't hassle them. Don't hassle them at all. Allow them to have their land, live in peace, no harassment. There's no reason to come against them. And so God had blessed them with that. Now, number 3, the people of Edom had a hatred for the Jews because of this brotherly relationship. Which brotherly relationship? Jacob and Esau. Because of that, there is an enmity or a hatred that happened between the two of them. Now, I think it was maybe Gail last week mentioned that Jacob and Esau, if you read in the book of Genesis, they will reconcile somewhat. They'll come back together. There'll be a mending of their relationship to a point. But that enmity between the descendants of those people continues to be at odds after that for generation upon generation. There are 2 occasions where they specifically came against the Jews. This is kind of important as we start our study of Obadiah. The first one was in 850 BC, where they linked arms with the Arab nations. All right, and the second one was in 600, where they linked arms with the Babylonians. And the reason why that is important is because I think I mentioned to you before. In fact, I even included that page again in your packet. It's a duplicate of what you got last week, but I wanted you to realize it. And that is because that's important in the dating of the writing of Obadiah. Half of the biblical scholars believe it was the first battle that Obadiah was writing about. And so if that's the case, then he's the first of the minor prophets to write a book. Half of the biblical scholars believe it was the second one with the Babylonians. And if that's the case, then he's up there with Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and in that time frame, much later on down the line. I think I shared with you, I have a tendency to go with the first date, because as we're going to see today in our writing, some of these other prophets are going to word for word repeat Obadiah's prophetic words. And it would be difficult if you were a contemporary in the same time period writing, because of course you have to get the writing and read it, and it's being passed around, and that takes a lot of time. Much easier if generations before there was a prophetic word that you had read and studied and seen, and then you write it, and it would explain why there are at least 3 of the prophets that write word for word the exact same things. So that's why I go with Obadiah being one of the first. Number 4, does the Lord send prophets to tell the people that he sees what the Edomites are doing? Yes, and that's going to be some of the message of the minor prophets. Not only Obadiah, which is exclusively about the Edomites, but some of the other prophets are also going to be talking about that. How did he say he would accomplish that? Or accomplish some, what he was going to do with the Edomites? How's he going to do that? Yes. Okay, he would lay out his hand in judgment against them. And so it's going to get even more severe as we read a little bit further. It's a very severe judgment that is going to be against them. It's going to be interesting, and we'll get more into it in a minute, to remember and think about the fact there are a lot of nations that came against the Israelites. The Moabites, the Ammonites, all those ites that you read about when you read Old Testament history, all of these people that came against the Jewish people. And while there are some things in scripture about them, nothing to the extent of what you read about with the Edomites. And so we're going to talk about, why is that the case? Why did this specific group of people receive such harsh judgment from the Lord? And we'll get into that. Even in the midst of all the judgment, God gives his people hope. All right. So he never, very rarely, I can't say never, he very rarely ever ends a prophetic word without a word of hope, a word of encouragement for the people. So I think we've talked about it, but I'd be interested in hearing your point. In our current world situation, can you see that old enmity at work? And explain what you mean by that. What do you have? Anti-Semitism, okay?
Just what you had said earlier about all the countries wanting to wipe them off the face of the earth.
Okay.
From the river to the sea, right?
Okay, and so is there, in your experience, is there another nation that you have ever heard that there is a majority of nations who say, not only do we want, to do something to you or come and overtake you, but we want to completely wipe you out. We don't want you to exist as a nation. We don't want you to exist as a people. Another group of people who suffered through a Holocaust, who suffered through just for existing on a strip of land. Nations came against them, not to get riches or oil, these Arab countries have lots and lots of riches and oil, don't they? They don't need that little strip of land there. But you have to remember that the spiritual battle over Jerusalem, is intense at every moment and has been since the beginning. Remember that it is on the mountain where the temple was built that they believe that Isaac was taken by Abraham, so to be sacrificed. That they believed that it was right there on that temple where that was to be sacrificed. And so that was sort of a beginning of that area. And that little piece of land where the temple stood on Mount Moriah, Mount Zion, you hear it mentioned a lot, or the Jerusalem Temple Mount. That is the most volatile piece of property, the few acres, in the entire world. There is no other piece of property in the entire world where there have been battles fought, where so many people want to claim that little piece of land, that little bit of segment. It was right on that property that Solomon built the temple. And then when that was wiped out, it was right on that exact same spot where the second temple was built, the one that Jesus worshiped in. And then that one was destroyed. And so that's, while we see physical battles, I've been on the Temple Mount where the IDF, where the Israeli Defense Force has had to come in and stop people from, I've seen them throw chairs, I've seen them throw stones, I've seen them take off their shoes and throw them. There is all of that going on, not to mention the gun battles that occur at times. But not only that, there is a spiritual battle over that little piece of land going on that we don't see with physical eyes. But it is constant, never-ending fighting that occurs there on that piece of land that we've already read and will continue to read. God says, that's mine. I have put my name right there on that little piece of land. And I will come back and rule the world from that little piece of land. So you can see why the enemy says, I'm taking it. I want it. And so the Muslims came and took it. The Crusaders came and overtook it. Before that, there's been fighting. It's gone into different hands, different people. It has belonged to different countries. And finally, when Israel gets it from the British, who have it at that time, when Israel gets it, for the first time in 2,000 years, an Israeli flag goes up the flagpole at the Temple Mount. Right there at the Wailing Wall, right there at the Kotel. A flag goes up, and it goes up and it waves for about 5 minutes, and then they're told, take it down. Take it down because it's too volatile, and it's going to cause too much trouble. And so then there becomes the give and take for land for peace, this and that. Israel, while they own that land, they give control over it to the Jordanians, who they're the ones who control it. When you go on the Temple Mount area, you are not supposed to wear any kind of cross, Christian jewelry. You are not supposed to carry a Bible. You are to have your shoulders and knees covered. You are not to have any public display of affection, even with your husband. No holding hands. No, none of that. And that's not a Jewish rule. That's not a Jewish rule. That's a Muslim, Jordanian-run rule as they rule over that area of the Temple Mount. Now, when you stop and think, ladies, that goes all the way back to our story of Jacob and Esau, when you think about that and how long that hatred has been there, and how through the generations, you wonder, has it been taught? Father to son, mother to daughter, Is it a spiritual battle that's occurring? Is there a demonic force in that? What is it that is causing that hatred to never end? There are times in history when it ratchets way up, and then there are times in history where maybe it's tiny bit calmer, but it never goes away, ever, to this day. Yes.
I don't know, but why have the Israelis given that over for the Jordanians to rule?
So they did it from the very beginning in 1948, and it was done as appeasement. So that in order to try and create, why did they give away the West Bank? Why did they give away the Gaza area strip? Why do they give away things? They give away land in hopes of creating peace. They gave Bethlehem to the Palestinian people in hopes that if they had a city of their own, things would go better. They would stop shooting rockets and things in there. And instead, what's ended up happening, if you see Bethlehem today, is it's a walled off city, as is Jericho. As you know, some of these areas where Israel has had to wall it off in order to stop them from attacking. When you go into Bethlehem, how many of you have ever had that chance? Few of you, yeah. So half a dozen or more. So when you go into Bethlehem, you can correct me if I'm wrong, ladies. For me personally, there is a darkness the minute you step into the city. There is a spiritual presence that you feel. Is that right? Am I right? The minute you go into that city, it literally feels heavy to be there. Yes.
I remember when we went in, they were on the top of the roofs and with their guns, and just what you're describing, it was like you say, it was just like dark, and we were all ready to leave.
Yes. Absolutely. You pull up in an Israeli bus if you're on a tour, and you have to park outside of Bethlehem and then get on an Arab bus with an Arab bus driver because they weren't allowing the Jewish people into Bethlehem, so the bus drivers and stuff couldn't go. They'd let us go in because we buy things, but and we spend money there. And so then you get on that and you enter, and it's almost like, I am not even kidding here, but it's almost like the minute you pass that border, there's a presence. And I bring that up to say that is going on continually. And it starts right here with the story that we're talking about. So when you watch the news and you see all of that that's going on, remember that. Remember that this is not new. And this is not the fault of any one particular president or the United Nations or the European nations or any of the other groups that we love to gripe and complain and say they're the reason why this is happening in the Middle East. It's not. Now, maybe some of them make it worse than others, and, there may be variables there with that, but this is a spiritual battle. There is no man or woman here on earth that can stop that or make that quit when that is a spiritual battle happening with the enemy. So we watch that, we remember that, we pray that God's will be done there, knowing that there's a lot that's going to be coming in the future in that area. That is the prophetic timepiece. We don't look to America. We don't look to Canada or Australia or Europe for prophetic happenings. If you want to follow prophecy, watch what happens in the Middle East. Watch what happens in Israel and Turkey and Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Iran and all of those countries where when we did our study in Revelation, we looked at it and we said, those are the countries. Now, we also know that there's a battle coming where most biblical scholars believe it's going to be coming from Russia. And no one could really understand that, because why would Russia want to come into Israel? There's very little there. Well, what is there in that little strip of land? Look at all the land that Russia has. They don't need more land. Why would they be coming there? But as we watch Russia linking arms with Korea and North Korea and Iran right now, Right now that's happening. Russia's linking arms with those two countries. We see that there is an alliance being formed. And why would they come down there and do that? We don't actually know now. We do know that Israel has in the past couple of decades found some very large deposits of natural gas in the Mediterranean, very large. In fact, one of them is called the Leviathan, which is, the big creature that's talked about in Job. And so maybe for something like that. But those are the things that we watch. If you know prophetic word and if you're interested in seeing what God's doing, those are the things that we watch on the news and say, wow, Russia linking arms with Korea and Iran, who want to do what? Wipe Israel off the face of the map? Russia with its large army? Russia with its landmass? Russia? And yet we know that that's one of the battles that's going to occur. All right. Any other comments or questions before we move on that?